many of you have used illicit drugs? This is an uncomfortable question, and it's one that's usually met with silence or with untruthful answers, but understanding the level of drug use in the community is of great practical importance to policymakers, health professionals, and law enforcement. So, how do we figure out the level of drug use in the community if we can't ask people about it? Well, we could drug test everybody, but that's financially and ethically impossible. Or we could take a sample from a wastewater treatment plant and drug test that. And that's exactly what around 26 countries around the world have started doing. Now, what they usually do is they'll take a sample or a series of samples and then come back 12 months later and take another sample, compare them to see whether there's been an increase or a decrease over that time. This kind of misses a whole bunch of information. Like, you can imagine a situation where there's been a huge increase in drug use mid-year that kind of drops away and flattens out by the end. You want to know if that had happened. Or maybe there was a huge drug bust and drug use kind of dramatically reduced and then slowly made its way back up again. And you'd want to know if that had happened too. And you'd even want to know the answer to more specific questions like, who are our drug users anyway? Are they occasional users, or do we have a problem with dependency? Now, to answer questions like that, we have to sample more regularly. So in a landmark study, the University of Queensland have been collecting data every day for 14 months from a wastewater treatment plant on the Gold Coast. As the statistician on the project, I can bring you the results for MDMA or ecstasy from that study. The first thing I've been able to show is that there's a clear weekly pattern to drug use. We have peaks around the weekends and music festivals, suggesting high occasional use. But we also see low troughs midweek, which suggests that for ecstasy, dependency is not a large problem. Now, there was an increase over the 14-month period, but unlike the once-a-year studies, I can show that this is not because of an increase in the number of dependent baseline users. And the increases that we see through the peaks, working with the federal police, we can show this is probably due to an increase in drug purity rather than in the number of users. So, sampling 7 days a week answers all of the questions that we want to ask, but that's a lot of sampling, and even the most dedicated honest student doesn't enjoy waiting in P quite that much. So my main contribution has been to show that you can sample as little as 2 or 3 days a week and still answer all of these questions. And that makes wastewater sampling throughout the year a more viable alternative for understanding the levels of and behaviours surrounding drug use worldwide.